Zoe's Ark once again in the headlines as charity members are imprisoned. Was their campaign to evacuate children from Darfur a case of humanitarian goodwill gone wrong? Or a more sinister cover for child trafficking? This is Inside Story. Hello there and a warm welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. It's a case that shocked the world. A French charity trying to illegally take 103 children from Chad to France. The founder of charity Zoe's Ark and his partner have 6 years later been sentenced to 2 years in jail. Peter Sharp reports from Paris.
It was October 2007 and aboard the chartered aircraft at Chad's N'Djamena airport, 103 orphans waiting to be flown to France for a new life with adoptive parents. But they weren't war orphans from Darfur, they all had families in Chad. Staff from the French charity Zoe's Ark were accused of trying to smuggle the children out of the country. Prospective parents left waiting at a Paris airport. Many had paid thousands of dollars for the chance to adopt. In court in Paris today, Eric Betrot, the founder of Zoe's Ark, and 5 other defendants were in court for sentence. Betrot and his partner, Émilie Lelouch, were both jailed for 2 years. The others escaped with suspended sentences.
It's so unjust, that's all. So unjust. And I just can't believe everything that's happened.
Lawyers said innocent charity workers were among those caught up in the scam.
They want to be recognized as victims of Eric Betrot and Émilie Lelouch, of the Zoe's Ark, that convinced them to go to Chad for humanitarian action. They were fooled.
The case dealt a body blow to France's reputation among its former African colonies, and with French troops on the ground in Mali, the verdict, it's hoped, will help repair its relationship with Chad, another key player in the region. Peter Sharp, Al Jazeera, in Paris.
Well, to discuss this further, we're joined today by Ashek Ibn Omar. He's former Chadian Minister of Foreign Affairs, now living in Paris. And in Tunis, we have Renaud Girard. He's Chief Foreign Correspondent for Le Figaro. Thank you both very much for being with us here today. Now, this really is an incredible story with so many unanswered questions. So let's start this discussion by trying to get some of those answers. Mr. Omar, what do you think was the motive of Eric Betrot and Zoe's Ark in taking these children?
A lot has been said about their motives in terms of humanitarian commitment and the will to help these children and to get them a better life. But basically, I can say that the first and the only motive is raw, simple greed. It started in December 2004. You remember, we witnessed the tsunami in Asia. And the emotion caused by the tsunami catastrophe in Europe has given rise to huge mobilization, and huge amounts of money have been given to charities in Europe. So the idea came to Eric Betrot and his group to set up a similar operation in Darfur in order to cash into this drama of the population. So I may say that the basic motivation is financial greed.
So you saw this simply as a money spinning operation?
No more than that.
Okay. Renaud Girard, do you agree with that? Was this simply motivated by financial gain?
I will not be so sure, because it's true that the families that wanted to adopt a child had paid to the association before leaving France to Chad 1,500 euros. But I think that this Mr. Betrot, who has just been sentenced for 2 years in in jail in France, he didn't have a criminal record before. I think it was rather some kind of megalomania. You think that, you know, the guy has got like very little education, poor common sense, obviously. You have to realize that 30 or 40 years ago, when all the humanitarian stuff started, and it started in France with Médecins Sans Frontières, it started in Africa, in the war of Biafra in the beginning of the 70s. And at the time you had like very high level young men and women devoted. Most of them were medical doctors, and humanitarian job was quite politically conscious, quite responsible, and done with by educated people. Now you have, of course, it went on like this. You have still like very good NGOs, but you have also plenty of other NGOs with very low level of education. And this Mr. Brito, who was he? Was just a kind of voluntary fireman, which in France is very little, and who decided to go in the humanitarian business without knowing the world, with anything even useful for the world. So I think he was megalomaniac. I think he wanted to please these people. I think he was feeling like he was a little bit a god, and he didn't care too much because of silliness and ignorance about the country where he were.
Do you think he knew that he was acting illegally?
I'm not so sure that he was that conscious, and probably people had on the ground, I don't know what people, but some Chadians that maybe wanted to do some money, had told him things that he believed. The important thing that Brito didn't have before a criminal record. It does not, of course, it's not an excuse for what it did, which of course put a shame on all the humanitarian business in France. But after all, the Chadian authorities could stop that on time, and no real crime. I mean, nobody was hurt, no child was hurt, no child was deprived from his parents. So this is the good news. So 2 years of a sentence is kind of, in France, a heavy sentence for a crime which is maybe intentional, but who has not been really consumed or done or in real terms. So no, I think it's an illustration of how people can get crazy, but by media frenzies. And the Chadian minister said rightly that, you know, there was this frenzy on the tsunami, and how they can live in a kind of virtual world, ignoring that there are countries with laws, and you know, and that you have to respect these cultures, and there is a Chadian government, and you have to speak to them, and you have to do things in a proper way.
And that was that was key, wasn't it? He didn't do things in the proper way.
You're not in the far west, if you like.
Exactly. He didn't run this past any authorities. He did get warned by the French Foreign Ministry that he wasn't acting in accordance with the laws. Mr. Omar, if he had managed to have got these children out of Chad and into France, what laws in Chad would he have broken?
Yes, first of all, I would like to go back to this, you know, the motivations. The Eric Brito and his group has been portrayed as some, you know, weirdo idealist and moved by humanitarian feelings toward the poor children in Africa and so on. There might be some of this within their motivation, but the way they duped everybody in this whole business, starting with the Spanish crew on the plane, the authority both in Chad and France, the way they they bribed some Chadian officers and local responsible on the villages. All this show clearly that the financial motivations is the principal one. But as to the way the thing were, managed by the group and the Chadian French government, I think that on the part of the government in Chad and in France, there are still some gray areas. The public is not aware of what had been going on in the official inner circles. But what is true that the group has set up another organization in Chad under a false name. It's not under the name of Jazeera, and it got all the clearances needed in France, in Spain, in Chad. That is no, coincidence that a scheme so cleverly, crafted by this group could go on like that without any official trying to stop it.
If he did have such sinister, if Zoe's Ark did have such sinister intent to make money from taking these children out of Chad, why then did President Idrissi Deby pardon them from 8 years of hard labour?
Well, you may have in mind the political background in Chad at that time. Idriss Deby and his government went into a lot of trouble with the World Bank and the international community at large. The main issue was the dispute over the oil revenue management law. You know that Chad has started producing oil from 2003. And since our country is very poor and has not the financial capabilities to invest in that sector, there has been an agreement between Chad, the World Bank, and the European Union to lend the money to build the pipeline, and the government of Chad would have to spend the oil revenue under some kind of local international control in order to direct it, the resources, to direct the revenue against toward the fight against poverty. And the president of Chad, he's backed down from that commitment.
Okay,
and
so you think it was political reasons that formed that decision? It was political reasons.
So in order to have the support of the French government and the President Sarkozy on this issue, the dispute with the World Bank, President Idriss Deby had no choice than to accept to let the French and Eric Breteau and his group to be sent back home to France under the cover of serving their sentence in French prison.
Okay, I just want to broaden the discussion out a little bit at this point, because Zoe's Ark isn't the first supposedly well-intentioned aid project to get it wrong. We had Kony 2012. That was a campaign to raise awareness about Uganda's Lord Resistance Army commander Joseph Kony, which caused a massive stir online last year. Tens of millions of people watched the video, but it didn't take long to draw criticism, including from many Ugandans. It was accused of being inaccurate, too simplistic, and worst of all, for its producers, self-serving. Another example, 1 million T-shirts for Africa. That was a scheme that wanted to donate second-hand clothes. And the problem there, a shortage of T-shirts isn't exactly a problem in Africa, especially on a continent where they are cheaply made for export. And lastly, the shoe brand Toms, who have donated more than 1 million pairs of shoes to developing countries. Like the T-shirts, critics say they send shoes to where people may already be employed to make them, and their campaign doesn't combat the root cause of shoelessness, which is poverty. Renaud Girard, just how dangerous do you think this so-called do-it-yourself humanitarianism, which acts outside of normal boundaries of authorities, how dangerous is this for general aid work in places like Africa?
I think that there should be some kind of control of who can pretend to be the director of a NGO. We have to check. It's true that there is a problem in the West. Like if you want to become a bank, if you like, in France, you need to have authorization to gather the money of the people for interest rates and so on. It's true that if you are an NGO, it's just an association, and it's very easy to build an association in France, and you can ask for generosity of the public without a lot of control. And probably the French legislators, I mean the member of parliaments, should be a little bit worried about that, so that this kind of incident, like this kind of megalomaniac, I don't know if they are crazy or crooks, half crazy, half crooks, if you like, can go and freely raise money and abuse the naivety and the real, because the people who wanted to help the children were really compassionate. I mean, these people were sincere. These people were probably not very educated people, but like good intentions people, good willing people. But there's truly a problem now in France, and I agree. I think that some kind of regulation should be taken so that there is a kind of minimum check of who raise or want to raise generosity money in the public.
Okay, Ashek bin Umar, whether, as Mr. Renaud Girard says, they are crazies or crooks, what impact has this case had on NGOs trying to work in that region, especially the Darfur region?
It is true that in the aid association community, there is a lot. There are many people who are, motivated by fantasies and crazy ideas. But I don't think that it is the main issue. The problem is deeper and much bigger than that. The image propagated by the media and the international organization about the humanitarian issue in Africa and the third world, it is very negative and very misleading. The conflicts in Africa are presented as some kind of irrational disruption in terms of communal disputes and backwardness and so on. People in the European country, some of them and the general public are motivated by good intention in order to help their brothers and sisters in Africa and other countries, but they have a very distorted image about the real issues on the ground. And the conflicts in Africa are, in the first place, political conflicts resulting from the bad governance by the regime in place in Africa, and also from the support the international organization, the developed countries.
Okay,
and
let me just jump in there. Let me just jump in, because do you not think that Africa needs to be, or countries in Africa need to be protected from such misinformation generated by these NGOs? I mean, I'm wondering what sort of legislation can be put in place here, because we've got the Hague Convention, which prohibits private adoptions, but only 13 African countries have signed on to that, and Chad is not one of them.
But maybe Chad is not, part of some of international agreement. But in Chad, we have our own laws that prohibits, child trafficking and illegal adoption and so on. So we don't need to be part of this international agreement of to have the legal instrument to put an end to such practices. So, but on the other hand, you know that corruption is rampant in our countries, and it is very easy for these NGOs or so-called NGO to bypass any legal arrangement in Chad or international law through bribing the local officials, and even some of them are very high placed in very high position within the government.
Okay.
So the problem is corruption and itself within the government.
Okay, this subject has generated quite a lot of chatter online, so let's take this opportunity to look at some of the reaction we've been getting on Facebook. Kyril says, only 2 years in jail. I doubt that this will dissuade would-be slave traders, and it makes a mockery of Chad's decision to repatriate them. Janet says 2 years is not long enough, and these two individuals are giving NGOs who are doing a great job in Chad a bad name. And we have Heidi saying if they wanted to help, they would help. They would provide safety, shelter, food, health and education so the kids would grow up to be leaders in their motherland. The sinister motives of human trafficking should receive the harshest of punishment. So, Mr. Girard, it is true, isn't it, that 2 years is not a long time back in France, certainly not as long as 8 years hard labour in Chad. Do you think they were given too lenient a sentence and that it's not going to deter other people from doing similar things?
I mean, there's the greed, and that, is not proved. I mean, these people didn't have before criminal record. I rather think that they thought themselves as gods. They are going to help, and it's really more megalomania. So how do you sentence megalomania? I think really 2 real years in sentence, and of course there's a huge fine, and there's also, of course, the dissolution of the association. Now the association is forbidden. I think that for a crime, because I repeat that no children have been harmed. I mean, nobody has been deprived for 1 year from his parents. So the crime, if you like, maybe there was an intention of committing this crime, but the crime was not actually committed, consommé, as we said in French.
Okay.
I don't know the word in English, maybe consumed.
Just going to jump in, apologies.
So I think now 2 years is quite strong.
Okay, just we are running out of time. I just want to address one last point. Apologies for interrupting there. One last point to Mr. Umar. The Chadian government has demanded more than $8 million in compensation for the families of these children. The French courts have rejected that. So what's your response to that?
Well, I don't agree with the idea that no harm has been done unto the families of these children. You know that there is a psychological trauma that had occurred within this family, and from what I have learned in Chad, some conflicts within the villages have erupted due to this problem, because the mothers of the children had been accusing the fathers of selling their children. And I have been told that some of the couple have resorted to divorce even. And some of the children, we must not forget that some of them were very young, as young of 1 year and a half. So the psychological trauma is still lingering, and these families really need financial compensation and reparation.
And there we're going to have to leave this discussion. So clearly it's a case that has far-reaching, very wide consequences. Thanks very much to our guests for joining us today in Paris, Sheikh Ibn Umar, and in Tunis, Renaud Girard. And thanks very much to you two for watching this edition of Inside Story. Do send us your comments to insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.